As sea levels rose across the planet, the continents were gradually engulfed by water. The once prosperous civilizations of humanity were submerged, leading to a great decline. However, this was not the end. In the submerged ruins of cities, a new ecosystem began to take shape. Fish now swim through decaying highways. They navigate through crumbling skyscrapers. The remnants of the old world are a silent testament to what was lost to the sea. The streets once bustling with people are now quiet pathways for schools of fish. A heavy boot disturbs the silt on the ocean floor. Two figures in diving suits explore the silent ruins, their lights cutting through the darkness. The father warns his son, Bota, to be careful of the glass ahead. Bota replies that he already sees it. They approach a dilapidated storefront, a former 24-hour mart. The father cautiously pushes open the door. Inside, the aisles are filled with silt and debris. The two of them scan the dark interior. Bota spots something on the shelves. He excitedly calls out to his father, having found a large supply of canned food. The father instructs him to take anything they can use. Bota finds a can of powdered milk but can't read the label. His father points out that he hasn't been studying his letters, but Bota questions the point of learning them in their world. The father sternly tells Bota that even if he can't find a use for something now, a time will come when he needs it. He insists that Bota needs to study more. Bota grows annoyed by the nagging. His father hands him a bundle of salvaged forks. Bota protests that they already have plenty of forks and don't need to take more. His father repeats his lesson that everything will eventually have a use, while Bota dismissively agrees. With their shopping cart full, the father tells Bota to hold on tight. He grabs a cord to activate their ascent device. Large balloons inflate, lifting the cart and its occupants upward through the water past the sunken city. He looks out at the submerged world. Bota silently reflects on these places his dad calls ruins, which were once cities teeming with people. To him, the buildings just look gloomy and scary underwater. Their balloons splash as they breach the surface. Their makeshift boat waits for them on the vast ocean. A young girl named Lita excitedly calls out to her dad from the boat's mast. He calls back, asking if she saw anything interesting while they were gone. Lita reports seeing nothing. Her father remarks that there is probably nowhere for birds to rest nearby. Bota adds that they have not seen a bird in months. Bota asks if his father really thinks anyone else is alive. Lita then asks a more innocent question, wondering if everyone in heaven is like their mother. After a moment of thought, the father addresses Bota and Lita. He reassures them that he is sure there are other people out there, but they have not met them yet because the ocean is so big. He promises to protect them with his life until they find others. He insists that they must help each other. The two children agree. His father reminds them that they are all in the same boat and must never forget that. Bota explains that everyone has duties and their dad is responsible for hunting and maintenance. Bota's job is to take care of the food and water. Lita is in charge of the laundry and cleaning. Exploring the ruins has always been their dad's job. Since last year, he has allowed Bota to do some hunting near the surface. Recently, his father has even allowed him to enter the ruins with him. This is how they gather everything they need from the sea, hoisting their finds aboard with a crane. The salvaged items crash onto the deck. One of their favorite activities is to inspect the strange tools they bring up from the depths. As evening approaches, Bota recalls the absolute rule they all must follow. The sun sets over the water and an alarm begins to ring. A bundle of clocks rings in unison. It signals the time their dad is always cautious of. The father urgently yells for them to run and get inside the ship. This is a moment they all have to be scared of. The father shouts for Bota to get inside the hatch. Bota freezes, looking at the fish they left drying on a rack. Bota cries out that he forgot to store the fish, but his father forbids him from going back. He forcefully shoves Bota down into the safety of the cabin. With great effort, the father pulls the heavy hatch closed. He seals them inside as the last sliver of light disappears. The boat sits quietly under the starry night sky. Inside, the only sound is the ticking of clocks. The family waits together in the dark. Lita watches her pet fish in a jar. She quietly asks her dad if she can hug it, but both her father and Bota immediately shush her. Lita looks worried, clutching the jar. A deep rumbling begins to shake the entire boat. The father pulls his children close. Bota realizes with terror that it has arrived. A huge tentacle slices through the water towards their boat. More tentacles break the surface. The monsters, as Bota knows, are nocturnal. Massive dark shapes surround the small boat, their glowing appendages rising from the depths as they begin to bump against the hull. The boat is rocked by the unseen creatures below. A deep rumbling sound fills the night. Inside, Bota covers his mouth in terror, his eyes wide with fear. Bota squeezes his eyes shut, wishing desperately for the monsters to go away. Suddenly, his father's hand clamps over his mouth, startling him. The father looks at him with a reassuring smile, telling Bota that everything will be all right. The father pulls his children close, explaining that the creatures will likely just prod the boat out of curiosity and then leave. Bota looks up nervously as water drips from the ceiling. Despite his words, the boat continues to crack and groan under the strain of the assault as the family huddles together. Bota remembers his father holding them tightly until the monsters were gone. He recalls the feeling of safety in his father's arms. The ticking of the clocks was a constant backdrop to their lives. After the danger passed, their father would gently tuck them in for the night. Lying awake, Bota quietly calls out to his father. He asks his father if there were many sea monsters where he used to live. His father replies that there were, as they live everywhere in the water. The father continues, explaining that where he lived they also had harpoonists. Bota asks what they are. His father describes them as warriors who fought sea monsters to protect their towns, illustrating his point with a story of their battles. Bota listens with wide-eyed fascination. He then reveals that he used to be a harpoonist too, showing Bota a tattoo on his shoulder as proof. Bota curiously points to 6 strange dots beneath the main design. The father clarifies that they are not dots but stars. Bota, unfamiliar with the concept, asks what a star is. The father realizes his son has never seen one because they are always below deck at night. He explains that they are bright lights visible at night. He tells him that long ago, people used them to navigate the seas. He describes the night sky as being filled with millions of bright jewels. His children sleep soundly beside him. The father watches over them with a gentle expression. He looks out at the vast, star-filled sky and the shattered moon. He quietly wishes he could show them how beautiful it is. The next morning, the family discovers that the fish they had hung out to dry have been ruined. Bota cries out in dismay, realizing it was a week's worth of food. His father surveys the deck, noting that the whole boat is a complete mess. The father comforts Bota, saying that at least they are all safe and were lucky. Bota, however, questions their luck. He points to the side of the boat. Deep, menacing claw marks have been gouged into the wood, looking like a clear warning for them to leave. The father says it just means he has a week of repairs ahead and that they might run out of parts. Hearing this, Bota eagerly offers to go to the ruins himself. His father is startled by the suggestion. He firmly forbids Bota from going, grabbing his shoulders to emphasize his point. He warns that monsters could be hiding in the ruins, even during the day. Bota protests, arguing that he wants to help and can go on his own. Exasperated, the father decides he has no choice. He declares that both Bota and Lita are banned from the ruins until they are 17 years old. Bota is left stunned by the declaration. Bota angrily confronts his father, questioning why he gets to make all the decisions and complaining that he's old enough to go where he wants. His father insists the rules are for their safety, but Bota retorts, asking how much longer they'll be treated like kids. He shouts that he is not like their stupid goldfish. His father tries to placate him, explaining that he's only banned from the ruins and that he'll take him anywhere else he wants to go. But Bota rejects the offer. He states that it doesn't change the fact that they are stuck on the boat. Bota looks out at the endless water, feeling trapped. He feels as though they are trapped on their small boat. He bitterly concludes that they are confined, just like a goldfish in a bowl. The father tries to reason with an upset Bota. Lita interrupts their argument, telling them to stop fighting and look. She excitedly points towards the horizon, having spotted birds flying in the distance. Both father and son look up, surprised. The sky is filled with seagulls, a rare sight. Realizing what it signifies, the father tells Bota to raise the sails as they head towards a large, ruined building. The building stands like an island in the middle of the sea. The family stares in awe at the building island. Seagulls circle the dilapidated structure. Overjoyed at the prospect of finding other survivors, Bota points excitedly, exclaiming that he sees people. He and Lita begin shouting greetings, asking if anyone is there. The father quickly clamps a hand over Bota's mouth, silencing him. He sternly tells Bota to wait inside the boat with Letta. With a grim expression, he warns his son that if anything should happen to him, Bota must turn the boat around and get away immediately. Bota asks if he is going to fight them. His father replies that it depends on whether they are good or bad people. He readies his harpoon gun and jumps from the boat. He splashes into the water, heading for the ruins. Bota and Lita watch silently from the boat. Their father swims toward the imposing structure. He reaches the base of the building and begins to climb up the cracked and broken concrete. He carefully makes his way up the side of the ruined building. Peering into a broken section, he calls out, asking if anyone is there and explaining that they need help. He receives no answer as he looks into the dark, silent interior. Nervously, he enters the building. He cautiously ascends a set of rickety wooden steps. He approaches a closed door in the crumbling concrete wall. He slowly pushes the heavy door open with a creak. The sight that greets him is horrifying. He is left momentarily speechless by what he sees. The room is filled with the skeletal remains of several people. Back on the boat, unaware of the grim discovery, Bota and Lita wait patiently, hoping the people are nice. Suddenly, a splash in the water catches Bota's attention. He sees someone splashing and struggling in the distance. A figure is flailing desperately in the water. Bota watches in shock, realizing it's a person. Meanwhile, inside the ruins, his father rummages through the belongings of the dead. He discovers a metal case and opens it. Inside the case are 2 large explosives. He picks one up, puzzled by their antique appearance. His attention is then drawn to a large, perfectly circular hole in the wall of the building. He wonders about the strange hole. He notices that the reinforced steel bars around its edge are bent inwards, suggesting an attack from the outside. A sudden sense of alarm grips him. He looks through the opening, his concern growing. He remembers the claw marks on his own boat, realizing they were a warning. A shiver of fear runs down his spine as the pieces click into place. A scream from the boat startles him. He calls out to Lita, looking back towards his boat. Lita points, telling him that Bota is trying to do something as he swims back. Bota calls for his dad to help him rescue the person in the water, as the father yells at him to get away. The father stares in shock. They watch the figure Bota is trying to save. A grotesque monster made of mud and debris erupts from the water where the person was struggling. He screams in terror, realizing that it's not a person at all. The creature plops back beneath the surface. It disappears from sight, leaving only ripples behind. Bota worriedly says that it disappeared, but his father corrects him. He states with grim certainty that there is something under them. A look of pure terror crosses the father's face as he stares into the depths. He quickly grabs both of his children, pulling them into a protective embrace. From the dark waters, a colossal, shadowy creature begins to stir. It rumbles as it moves, dragging a smaller boat on a tether as it rises towards the surface. The massive beast lifts their boat from underneath, raising it completely out of the water. With a tremendous surge, the monster surfaces, its immense body dwarfing their vessel. Its powerful jaws begin to crack and splinter the hull. As the boat creaks and shatters around them, the father desperately clings to his children, trying to keep them from being thrown into the churning water. An enormous, grotesque face with human-like features emerges from the waves, roaring directly at them. A colossal sea monster with a disturbingly human-like face erupts from the depths, its massive jaws clamping down on a makeshift boat. The sound of splintering wood cracks through the air as the vessel is torn apart by the creature's immense power. Amidst the creaking wreckage, a man desperately clutches a small child, trying to keep them both from being swallowed by the churning waves. The monstrous face looms over them, water cascading from its maw as it stares down at its terrified prey. The force of the attack sends Bota and Lita flying, separating them from the remains of their boat as they are cast into the violent sea. The water swirls ominously, hinting at the immense power moving just beneath the surface. With a thunderous boom, the monster surfaces once more, revealing a strange, mechanical appendage attached to its body. A massive wave throws the family through the air. Their boat is completely annihilated, its splintered halves tossed aside in the churning water. Flung into the sea, the father, Bota and Lita struggle to stay afloat. Bota looks on, exhausted and terrified. Huddled together, the father and his 2 children stare up in wide-eyed terror at the looming threat. The monster's massive, glowing tail whips through the air towards them. It crashes down into the water with devastating force. They are submerged again, tossed about like driftwood amidst the debris. The father and Bota fight against the current, their faces contorted in effort. The powerful waves generated by the monster slam against the side of a nearby ruined building. In the relative calm after the impact, the massive shadow of the beast can be seen lurking in the depths beside the structure. The ruined building groans under the strain of the assault. The turbulent water continues to creak against the structure. The father manages to pull himself and later onto a precarious ledge of debris at the base of the ruins. Bota coughs up seawater, exhausted but alive. His father anxiously asks if he is all right, and Bota weakly confirms that he is. Seeing his sister unresponsive, Bota frantically grabs her, calling out Lita's name in a panic. He turns to his father, his voice filled with worry, and explains that he thinks Lita fainted from the shock. The father expresses his relief that his children are fine. Sensing something is wrong, Bota looks at his father with concern and asks about his condition. Bota's question reveals a horrifying truth. His father has been impaled through the stomach by a piece of metal rebar. The father tries to downplay his injury, but Bota points out the severe bleeding. Realizing their peril, the father urgently tells Bota to take Lita and run, warning that they will all die if they stay. He offers a pained smile, reassuring his son that he will be right behind him. Trusting his father, Bota hoists Lita onto his back and dashes through the ruins. The injured father watches them go, his face a mixture of pain and resolve. Alone, the father grits his teeth against the immense pain, blood dripping freely from his grievous wound. With a groan of agony, he attempts to pull the metal rod from his body. Just then, a swirl in the water alerts him to a new danger, as another sea creature surfaces nearby. It's the same colossal monster that destroyed their boat. The father's eyes widen in horror as its dripping face is now fixed upon him. The creature crashes onto the rubble right in front of him, cornering the wounded man. The monster's skin hisses and burns in the sunlight. The father realizes something is wrong. It is forcing itself out of the water despite the pain. The two are locked in a tense stare-down, the monster's bloodshot eyes fixed on the man. The creature advances. The father braces himself for the inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, the monster's attention shifts, its massive head turning to look past the father and into the ruins. It has spotted its true prey, Bota, still struggling to escape with Lita on his back. The monster's jaw hangs open, drool dripping from its teeth. Ignoring the father completely, the creature launches itself towards the children. The father screams a desperate warning for Bota to run. Hearing his father's cry, Bota glances back over his shoulder. The sight of the monster hurtling towards him fills Bota with absolute terror, and he lets out a horrified scream. The monster crashes through the ruins, its massive jaws snapping at the space where Bota and Lita were just moments before. Bota dashes away just in time, narrowly escaping the creature's bite. The monster roars in frustration as it smashes into the wall. The monster's teeth close just inches from Bota. The force of the impact sends Bota flying through the air. Bota lands hard on the ground, panting for breath. Suddenly, a new, starfish-like creature emerges from a hole in the wall. The creature lands directly in front of them, blocking their path. Bota looks on in shock as Lita begins to stir. The strange creature pauses, looming over the two children. Terrified, Bota quickly covers Lita's mouth to keep her from making a sound. The starfish creature extends a dripping appendage toward them. Suddenly, a massive tentacle from the first monster smashes through the wall right beside Bota. More tentacles rain down from above, forcing Bota to scramble for safety. He screams and rolls away to avoid being crushed. A final tentacle slams down before retracting into the darkness. Bota cautiously looks up, wondering if the creature has finally left. He carefully peers out from their hiding spot. His relief is short-lived as a new sight fills him with dread. Through the dust, he sees the figure of his father holding a large weapon. Bota calls out to him in relief. His father's expression is grim and distant as he turns. Something is terribly wrong, his father's eyes are vacant and white. Bota stares in horror as he sees his father's body, now swollen and disfigured, looming over Lita's unconscious form. To his utter terror, Bota watches as the starfish creature's appendages retract into his father's face. The sight reveals a grotesque fusion of man and monster. The creature, using his father's form, grabs Bota and pulls him into its fleshy mass. He is certain that he is about to die. Suddenly, he is yanked forcefully into the air. Bota's fingers scrape against the ground as he is dragged away. The creature yanks him completely off his feet and into the air. Now fully captured, Bota is lifted high into the sky. He screams in terror, held aloft by the creature's long appendage. The large fish-like monster reappears, its gaze fixed on Bota, who is now being dangled helplessly before it. The creature lowers Bota directly into the waiting maw of the giant monster. Watching the rows of teeth approach, Bota stammers in shock. He screams his father's name in absolute despair. Just then the real father, alive and covered in blood, drives his weapon through the appendage holding his son. With a powerful slice, he severs the tentacle, freeing Bota. The giant monster shrieks in pain from the attack. The father slides down the monster's hide, dragging his blade along its flesh. He catches Bota over his shoulder as he lands safely on the ground. He quickly sets Bota behind him, shielding the boy with his own body. He prepares his weapon for the coming fight. Enraged, the father screams at the beast, telling the damn monster not to touch his son. The colossal Leviathan turns its full attention to them, its massive body coiling. The beast lets out a low, menacing growl. The father yells for Bota to get behind the rocks, and the boy complies. He observes the creature's immense size, realizing he's never seen a Leviathan this big, perhaps even larger than a scutum. The father focuses, telling himself he must stop thinking and that he cannot fail. Bota watches from behind the rocks, understanding that if his father fails, he and Lita will die. He activates his weapon, extending its blade with a sharp click. He then dashes forward to meet the beast. Vowing to kill the bastard, he charges head-on. The monster swings a massive claw at him. He ducks under the attack, the claw narrowly slicing his face as he passes. He slides along the monster's flank. With a powerful roar, he attacks. He unleashes a flurry of slashes with his blade. The Leviathan screeches as blood spurts from its wounds. It raises an enormous claw to crush its attacker. Evading the blow, the father lands on the monster's back. He sprints up its massive body. He leaps high off the creature's head, weapon raised. He notes that despite its size, the beast is slow. Positioning himself in the air, he brings his weapon down with immense force. He slams the blade deep into the monster's skull. He drives the blade deeper into the creature's head. He is confident that he can win this fight as long as it stays out of the water. With a final stomp, he pushes the weapon in as far as it will go. Using the embedded blade as a pivot, he spins his body, carving a massive gash across the Leviathan's head. The wounded beast stumbles back towards the water. As it retreats, the monster whips its powerful tail. The blow catches the father and sends him crashing into the nearby ruins. The father coughs up a spray of blood from the devastating impact. Watching from his hiding spot, Bota screams his father's name in horror. The massive Leviathan growls, thrashing in the shallow water by the ruins. The father, grimacing with effort, prepares for his next move. With a determined look, he swings on a rope directly toward the monster's open mouth. In a swift motion, he slices the rope midair. Using the momentum, he swings through the air, maneuvering around the ruins and grabbing onto a ledge. He lands before the monster and forcefully shoves a large metal beam into its gaping maw, propping it open. With the beast immobilized, he strains and pulls his embedded weapon from its mouth. The weapon comes free with a gush of the monster's blood. Blood splatters across the father's face and rains down on Bota, who watches from below. Bota looks up in awe, thinking his dad is amazing. He realizes with amazement that his father is actually winning the fight, as the man continues his relentless assault on the trapped beast. Now inside the monster's mouth, he uses his weapon to shatter one of its teeth. He stands on the monster's lower jaw and drives his blade deep into it. With a furious barrage of slices, he hacks away at the creature's head. As it screeches in pain, covered in blood, he screams for the monster to die. As he continues his attack, suddenly the beam propping the monster's jaws open cracks and shatters, and the father looks up in alarm. The massive teeth slam down, impaling him through the chest. He coughs up blood as a distant voice calls out for him. His father slumps over the now-dead creature. Bota cries out in horror. The father turns to look at his son one last time. His mind drifts to a memory of his children, Bota and Lita, thinking of how he was always worried about them. He recalls his fear whenever Bota went out for a dive, how his heart would pound in his chest. He remembers holding his children at night time, comforting them with a smile but hiding his own fear. He admits to himself that he was scared too. The fear of losing them, of not being able to protect them, was a constant weight on his mind. Bota watches, his face filled with terror and tears, as his father's thoughts conclude. Mortally wounded, the father looks on sadly and manages a faint smile. He tells Bota that he loves him, and his hand goes limp, slipping from his weapon. The greatsword clatters to the ground in front of Bota. In his final moments, the father pulls out an explosive device and asks Bota to take care of Lita. He plants the device into the ground. As Bota looks on in stunned silence, a massive explosion tears through the Leviathan's head. Bota is thrown backward by the force of the blast, as the monster's carcass is engulfed in flames. The remains of the monster begin to sink into the dark water. The father's body, still on top of the beast, disappears beneath the waves. Bota, covered in soot and blood, stumbles to his feet. Looking out at the now empty sea, he stares at the spot where his father disappeared, where only bubbles rise to the surface. He calls out for his dad again, but his hope shatters when he spots his father's broken glasses floating in the water. And he breaks down completely. His heartbroken scream echoes across the vast, empty ocean. Only the single, ruined tower remains, a silent witness in the middle of the sea. A young boy, Bota, stares blankly, his face splattered with blood and grime, lost in the immediate aftermath of the explosion that took his father. A faint, hopeful question for his dad hangs in the air. The only answer is the sight of his father's broken glasses floating in the murky water. The terrible truth sinks in, and Bota lets out a heart-wrenching scream for his father. His cry echoes across the vast, empty ocean surrounding their lonely, ruined tower. Bota stands alone on the ruins, his father's weapon on his back. Through the mist, a derelict ship creaks as it drifts towards him. Aboard the ship, Bota calls out for his father and his sister, Lita. He follows the sound of sobbing. He finds a small, huddled figure he recognizes as his sister. He rushes to Lita's side, asking what's wrong and where their dad is. Without a word, she lifts a trembling arm and points. Bota turns to see what she is pointing at. His eyes land on the gruesome sight of his father's mangled body floating in the water. Bota gasps in utter horror. Crying out for his dad, Bota lunges for the railing. Lita grabs him, pleading for him not to go, but he struggles against her hold, desperate to reach their father. Lita desperately holds on, begging him not to go. Her terror manifests as a monstrous visage as she screams for him not to leave her behind. Bota screams, waking from the nightmare. A storm rages outside, crashing waves against their crumbling sanctuary. He sits panting, exhausted from the dream. He looks over at his sister, Lita. She is safe, sleeping soundly on his lap. Tears well up in Bota's eyes as he quietly mourns, thinking of his father. He reflects on his father's actions, realizing now that what he mistook for being treated like a child was actually his dad's constant, tireless effort to protect them from the dangers of the ocean and the Leviathans. His father's last request to take care of Lita echoes in his mind. He clutches his sleeping sister, accepting that their dad is gone and that from this moment on they are truly on their own. Now alone in the world, they must fend for themselves. A sudden splash reveals a small bit of fortune. Their boat has washed up against the ruins. Bota excitedly spots the boat, noting that all their supplies are still inside. He calls to a despondent Lita, telling her to help him salvage anything useful. She quietly gets his attention. Lita finally asks the question that has been hanging between them: where is their dad? Bota freezes, unsure of what to say or if his little sister can handle the devastating truth. Bota struggles to find the words. Lita's eyes fill with tears as she asks why he isn't there. Her voice trembles as she questions if he is dead and has gone to be with their mom. Unable to lie, Bota can only look at his sister with sorrow. The two children embrace, their shared grief pouring out in a wave of tears. Some time has passed and seagulls circle the wreckage. The siblings have begun the task of survival, having salvaged what they could from their boat. Lita is happy to see one of their salvaged clocks is still ticking, but Bota tells her this is all they could salvage. He points out that since the monster attacked during the day, they can no longer rely on the clocks for safety. As if on cue, their stomachs grumble with hunger. Bota gently pats Lita's head, asking if she's hungry. She puts on a brave face and loudly denies it. Her rumbling stomach gives her away. Lita insists she can handle it, but Bota decides they need to find food. He searches their supplies, dismayed to find that their harpoon gun and all the fishing tools are gone. As he rummages through a box, it slips. A few forks clatter to the ground. Bota remembers a time his father insisted on taking extra forks during a dive. He had argued that they didn't need them. He recalls his father's lesson: even if you think you don't need something, you might need it eventually. Staring at the forks, Bota now understands his father's foresight. Wiping his tears, Bota gets an idea. He fashions a makeshift harpoon by tying a fork to a pole. He proudly shows his creation to Lita, who smiles in agreement. With his new tool in hand, Bota stands at the water's edge. He peers into the deep, ready to hunt. He hesitates, fear gripping him as he wonders if he should go in. He is terrified that the monster might still be alive, and the water he was once so comfortable in now feels menacing. Just as he considers turning back, Lita grabs his shirt. She begs him not to go, afraid the monster will return. Seeing her fear, Bota forces a smile and agrees, realizing he must be brave for her. They manage to find a large crab on the rocks instead. As night falls over their isolated home, they cook their catch over a crackling fire. Lita devours the crab meat. When Bota asks if she is going to eat, she claims she isn't hungry and that he can have it all. She giggles, happy to have a meal despite her earlier denial. Bota smiles as he watches her eat, but his own stomach rumbles painfully. The reality of their situation hits him. With nothing to eat or drink, he needs to come up with a plan for their survival. They collect dripping rainwater in bottles. Bota knows that while the rain has given them water for now, it's not a sustainable solution and will likely only last a day. He remembers another of his father's lessons. His dad had offered to teach him how to drink seawater, a concept Bota found impossible. His father began explaining a method using a bottle and a cup. His father had explained how sunlight would evaporate the seawater, allowing the fresh, condensed water to be collected. At the time, Bota was unimpressed, simply asking if that was all there was to it. Applying his father's knowledge, Bota sets up several solar stills using plastic bottles. Soon, fresh water begins to drip and collect inside. Bota and Lita watch in amazement as the contraption works. They eagerly drink the fresh water they've made. Lita exclaims that the water isn't salty at all. Overjoyed with their success, Bota celebrates, realizing they've solved their water problem. He lifts Lita into the air, laughing with relief. Lita looks at Bota with determination, reminding him that she learned a lot from their dad and that they can succeed. Bota thinks to himself that since they don't know how long they'll be living there, he needs to explore. He decides he must memorize the layout of their new home, which he calls the building island. Lita, not wanting to be left behind, declares that she's coming with him. Bota leads the way up a set of precarious stairs, telling Lita to be careful. He helps her up the last step. They stop in front of a heavy, rusted door. The two children cautiously peek through the creaking door. They are stunned to find a desolate room filled with debris and the skeletal remains of several people. A closer look reveals a gruesome scene, with skulls crawling with worms and insects. Horrified by the sight, Bota and Lita cry out in terror. Bota quickly grabs Lita, pulling her close. Lita trembles with fear, asking Bota who the people were. Holding her protectively, Bota guesses that they must have lived on the island before. Lita asks why they died, but Bota avoids the question, suggesting they quickly check for useful items and leave. He pulls a dusty tarp off a pile of supplies. The dust from the tarp makes Lita cough. Bota finds a large jerry can, surprised by the sloshing sound from within. He opens the can and sniffs it, hoping it's water. He recoils from the strong smell, realizing it's fuel. As Bota sets the fuel can aside, he discovers something else, a crate containing a large mortar shell. He lifts the heavy shell, a look of confusion on his face as he tries to identify it. A memory flashes through his mind of a similar shell being dropped into the water, followed by a massive explosion that struck a sea monster. With a start, Bota realizes it's the same kind of bomb his dad used. The memory of his father's fierce battle fills his thoughts, and he wonders if he will ever be strong enough to fight sea monsters like him. Bota glances over at the skeletal remains, noticing two figures huddled together. He somberly realizes they were probably a family just like his. The grim discovery fills him with a heavy sense of responsibility, making him question if he can truly protect Lita. He looks at his sister, determined to prevent her from meeting the same fate as the family in the room. He worries about their future. Looking out at the endless ocean surrounding their crumbling refuge, Bota silently wonders if they will be able to survive there. Later, Bota works on a tool by a crackling fire. Lita curiously watches a small crab scuttling nearby. With renewed determination, Bota decides that if they are going to live there, he must enter the water to hunt for food. He steels himself, thinking that if the monster from before appears again, he will use his father's sword to protect later. He recalls his father's dying wish, a memory that gives him strength as he inspects the complex weapon. He finds a small switch on the sword's hilt and clicks it. The sword immediately activates, releasing a powerful blast of steam. The sudden activation surprises him. The hissing intensifies as the weapon powers up. Suddenly, a powerful propulsion system kicks in, launching the unprepared Bota backward with great force. He slams hard against a concrete pillar. Bota cries out in pain as the impact leaves him with a bloody nose. Lita approaches, holding a cup with the crab inside, and asks if he is crying, which he denies. She then tells him to come with her, saying she found something strange. She leads him to a large wooden door set into the floor. Bota realizes it must be a basement. Lita explains that it's where the crabs were hiding, so he decides to investigate for anything useful. As Bota descends into the darkness with his makeshift spear, Lita stays at the top of the stairs, telling him to be careful. He cautiously makes his way down the stone steps. His face is tense with apprehension. A low, strange sound echoes from the darkness below. Bota gulps, his eyes wide with fear as he braces himself for whatever lies ahead. He takes another careful step down the crumbling stairs. Suddenly, a huge fish leaps out of the water at the bottom of the stairs, splashing him. Bota cries out, completely startled by the unexpected sight. He looks down and discovers an indoor pool, teeming with fish swimming in the clear water. Overjoyed, Bota shouts that he sees fish, and immediately splashes into the water. He swims amongst the school of fish. He's amazed to see how large the fish are. He marvels at the sheer number of them. Seeing his chance, he successfully spears one of the large fish. Suddenly, a monstrous clawed hand bursts from the water. Bota screams in terror as he is pulled under. He finds himself surrounded by strange, spherical objects with grasping hands, and he kicks desperately to break free. With dawning horror, Bota realizes he has stumbled into their nest. Before he can escape, a clawed hand seizes his ankle, pulling him deeper. A grotesque fish-like creature emerges from the nest, its grip tight on Bota's leg. Bota lets out a terrified scream. As the monster opens its mouth to bite, Bota shoves his spear into its gaping maw. He violently drives the spear into the creature's eye. The monster shrieks in agony, thrashing wildly as Bota clings to its back. He manages to break free and swims for the surface. He reaches the safety of the stone steps, watching as the wounded creature sinks into the dark water. A close-up reveals the spear still embedded in the monster's bloodshot eye. Bota finally breaks the surface, gasping for air. He scrambles onto the steps, horrified by the realization that the nest was full of eggs. His relief is short-lived as a massive clawed hand erupts from the water behind him. The hand grips the edge of the stone steps, pulling something large from the depths. Bota turns, his face contorted in fear. The enormous monster he had stabbed emerges from the water. Terrified, Bota brandishes his father's sword, screaming for it to stay back. The creature ignores his warning and lunges forward with its mouth wide open. Bota narrowly dodges as the monster's claws smash the stone steps where he just stood. He pants heavily, trying to catch his breath after the close escape. The sound of heavy stomping echoes up the stairs as the monster pursues him. Exhausted, Bota reaches the top of the stairs. He desperately tries to push the heavy door shut, but the monster is too strong. The door slams down, trapping him beneath its weight. Pinned and helpless, Bota watches in horror as the monster's claws begin to splinter the wood above him. As the door groans and an eye peers through a crack, Bota loses his balance. He is filled with a final, desperate rage and screams that the monster must die. He raises his father's sword and plunges it through the door with all his strength. Panting and sweating, he holds the sword in place, waiting. Silence falls, and Bota cautiously wonders if the creature is finally dead. Suddenly, the heavy concrete counterweight is dragged away. The door is lifted off of him with ease. Exhausted, Bota slumps to the ground. He looks up in shock at the empty room. Confused and disoriented, he calls out for Lita. Panic sets in as he frantically looks around. He runs through the ruined basement, shouting her name. He dashes towards a hole in the wall leading outside, still calling for her. He finds Lita standing on a rocky outcrop, staring silently out at the vast ocean. Bota runs towards her, telling her to get away from the water. Lita turns and quietly tells him to look. She points a single finger towards the horizon. Bota follows her gaze to a distant point on the water. He sees a lone, human-like silhouette standing on the surface of the ocean. The waves lap gently around the mysterious figure. Bota's face drains of color as he pants in terror. He realizes with absolute certainty that the creature is still alive, and it is right there. Standing amidst the ruins, Bota urgently shouts at Lita, telling her to get away from the water. Lita, seemingly unfazed, turns and tells a confused Bota to look. Following her gaze, Bota points towards a lone, human-like silhouette. The figure stands impassibly on the surface of the distant water. Bota's confusion turns to wide-eyed terror as he realizes it is the monster. A grotesque creature made of stone and water erupts from the sea, confirming Bota's fear that it is here. The sight triggers a traumatic memory for Bota of his father facing a similar, hulking monster. The memory flashes to the horrifying moment the creature's massive jaws clamp down on his father. Bota is gripped by the horrifying realization that the monster was still alive. Back in the present, Lita has boarded a small boat and is paddling towards the figure. Bota calls out to her in disbelief. Lita joyfully exclaims that her dad has come back. Bota screams desperately for her to return, insisting that the figure is not their father. The scene shifts to a symbolic image of old clocks, bound together by rope. The clocks tick away relentlessly. The ticking gives way to frantic ringing, as the alarms on the clocks go off simultaneously. The sound echoes Bota's internal panic, his face contorted in a silent scream. As the ringing continues, Bota looks up at the sky. He notices with dread that the sun is setting. Without hesitation, Bota leaps into the churning water to go after his sister, shouting her name as she calls back to him. He swims with all his might. The sound of the ringing alarm seems to follow him beneath the waves. Underwater, Bota is startled by a sudden movement. A swarm of small, dark creatures emerges from the submerged ruins. He realizes with horror that they are sea monsters, a whole school of them pouring out into the open water. Startled by the monsters, Bota quickly breaks the surface, gasping for air. Lita calls to him from the boat, worried they are too late to get back. She points toward a nearby rocky outcrop as he grabs hold of the boat. They reach a small, crumbling tower jutting out of the sea, and Bota urges Lita to climb up quickly. Bota scrambles up the side of the rock after her. He pulls himself to safety. Just as Bota gets his footing, he senses danger. A massive fish-like monster slams into their refuge, sending Bota flying as Lita screams in terror. Bota quickly recovers and holds Lita protectively as turbulent waves crash around their small refuge. They cling to each other, catching their breath. The water around them begins to swirl ominously. Looking out, they see that they are completely surrounded by a pack of the giant, predatory sea monsters. Bota looks at the building they fled, realizing it's so close yet unreachable. He despairs, knowing the monsters will attack if they jump in, and wonders what they should do. One of the monsters lunges, crashing into the rock and shattering it. Bota shields Lita from the impact. He watches in horror, realizing their small sanctuary is collapsing into the monster-infested water. He envisions them being torn apart by the creatures below. He believes that it is all over. Overwhelmed by helplessness, Bota thinks there's nothing he can do. A memory of his sister's voice calling his name echoes in his mind. He remembers his father's heartfelt promise to protect them both with his life. The memory of his father's final, bloodied moment surfaces, recalling his last request for Bota to take care of Lita. The memory of his father fills him with resolve. Remembering his father's sacrifice, he questions how he could give up so easily. He clenches his grip on his weapon. His eyes burn with renewed determination and defiance. He stands to face an approaching monster, shouting that he has to protect Lita for his dad. He charges forward with a yell. Bota leaps into the air and brings his heavy weapon down with full force, smashing it into the creature's head. The monster shrieks as blood sprays from the wound, the impact creating a massive splash. Bota stares in shock, hardly believing he did it. However, his victory is momentary as other monsters begin to close in. Standing over the defeated creature, Bota holds his ground with Lita behind him, surrounded by the remaining predators. With renewed determination, Bota stands before a massive sea monster, vowing to protect Lita for the sake of his father. He lets out a fierce cry and charges forward. He brings his weapon down with immense force onto the creature's head. The monster crashes into the water, defeated. Bota stares in shock, momentarily stunned that he succeeded. His relief is cut short as two more of the beasts emerge from the depths. Seeing the new threat, Lita cries out and begins to run. Bota quickly turns to defend his sister, slicing at another monster. The powerful blow lands, but the impact causes their unstable perch to crack. The ground crumbles beneath them. Bota panics as they begin to fall. He instinctively grabs Lita to shield her. They look terrified as they plummet towards the water. A monster's hand claws at the collapsing rock. Bota leaps from the falling debris towards a small boat floating nearby. He crashes into the boat, still holding Lita. The remaining monsters turn their attention to their fallen companion. They begin to devour it. From the boat, Bota and Lita watch the gruesome scene unfold. Bota observes in horror that the creatures are eating each other. Taking advantage of the distraction, Bota shouts for Lita to start rowing. Together, they paddle furiously to escape. Lita spots more monsters approaching, warning that they are coming. Their boat bumps against the stone base of a larger structure. Bota helps Lita out of the boat and onto the landing. The creatures close in on their new location. Lita alerts Bota to their approach, and he expresses his dismay at how quickly they've caught up. Inside the dilapidated building, Bota looks up a long, rickety staircase. He urges Lita to climb, telling her he will break the stairs to stop their pursuers. With a determined grunt, Bota raises his weapon. He begins to hack away at the wooden supports of the staircase. He struggles, exclaiming that the wood is too thick. He sees that smaller, salamander-like creatures have already gotten inside. The creatures begin crawling up the stairs. Lita lets out a small yelp of fear. The creatures wriggle relentlessly towards them, causing Bota to scream in alarm. Driven by panic, Bota frantically continues to strike the staircase, desperately trying to break it. He screams in frustration for the stairs to break. At that moment, a large, clawed hand grabs onto the edge of the damaged steps. A large monster begins to climb, its weight pulling on the fragile staircase and causing Bota to lose his balance. From the safety of an upper ledge, Lita urges Bota to hurry as the monster closes in on him from below. Lita reaches down and pulls her brother up onto the ledge. Just as he clears the edge, a monster's claw slashes across his back, making him cry out in pain. The damaged staircase finally splinters and collapses. The pursuing monsters fall back to the floor below. High above, Bota and Lita have reached safety. Panting with exhaustion and fear, the two children look down. They see the growling creatures trapped on the lower level. The monsters claw futilely at the stone wall, unable to reach them. Bota and Lita watch silently from their hiding spot, still on edge. Bota whispers that the creatures cannot get up. Overcome with relief, he collapses, panting that they made it and thanking God. Lita notices the wound on his back and points out that he is bleeding, but Bota dismisses it as fine. He suggests they wait there until the sun rises. As Bota looks out from their hiding spot, he freezes. A hulking, bloated monster with a harpoon in its eye stands before them, blocking their way. The children stare in shock and confusion. Before they can react, the creature lunges, slamming Bota to the ground. The monster roars, its enormous, tooth-filled maw opening wide above the trapped and terrified Bota. Bota screams as the creature's massive, sharp teeth begin to close in around him. Suddenly, Lita strikes the monster's other eye with her hammer. She demands that it let go of her brother. Pinned beneath the beast, Bota cries out her name in surprise. With both eyes impaled and dripping fluid, the monster recoils. It begins to thrash about wildly in pain. Bota quickly scrambles away. The blinded creature turns its head, trying to sense where the second attack came from. Its gaze falls upon Lita. She stands frozen with fear against a nearby wall. Unable to see, the monster begins to sniff the air. It slowly closes the distance to the terrified Lita. As the creature's sharp teeth get closer, Lita lets out a small whimper of terror. With the monster's jaws just inches from her face, Lita closes her eyes and cries out her brother's name. Trapped and terrified, Lita cries out her brother's name. A loud clang echoes through the structure. The sound comes from Bota, who strikes a metal container to create a diversion. He yells for the monster to come after him, drawing its attention away from Lita. The ruse works. The blinded monster turns towards the sound and lets out a ferocious roar. With a desperate cry, Bota readies his throw. He hurls a jerrycan directly into the creature's gaping mouth. The monster's jaws snap shut on the can, the force of the bite sending Bota sliding backward. The beast crashes through a wall. Bota hits the ground with a hard thud. Bota struggles to his feet. The dazed monster stands with liquid pouring from the crushed can in its mouth. Fueled by rage and desperation, Bota screams for the creature to die. He grabs his weapon and swings with all his might. He strikes a cluster of exposed power coils on the floor. The impact unleashes a massive electrical surge. The electricity erupts in a blinding, flickering flare. The monster is engulfed in the explosion. Bota grabs Lita and urges her to run. He points toward a ladder, telling her they are nearly to safety. The monster continues to flail in the electrical fire. Something falls from its mouth. Bota looks down from the ladder and sees it's a mortar shell. He stares in horror at the unexpected danger. Having scrambled into a hatch, Bota screams at Lita to get down, warning that the shell is going to explode. The shell begins to hiss, ready to detonate. He grabs Lita and pulls her down. A blinding flash consumes the area. A massive explosion tears their refuge apart. Bota and Lita are thrown by the force of the blast. The entire structure begins to crumble and collapse into the sea. The wreckage, along with the bodies of the slain monsters, crashes into the water. Bota and Lita are caught in the chaos. Their platform plunges into the churning waves. They are submerged amidst the falling debris. Debris and monster corpses rain down into the water, cracking and breaking apart all around them. Bota navigates through the underwater chaos. The two children break the surface, gasping for air. Bota is relieved that the monster eggs were destroyed. His relief fades as he wonders what they will do now. He looks around in despair, realizing the entire island has sunk. His shark is interrupted by a clawed hand grabbing the edge of their wreckage. He turns in terror. A surviving monster pulls itself from the water. Their horror intensifies as they realize they are not facing one, but a whole swarm of creatures that are now surrounding them. Bota holds Lita close as they both cry out in terror. The monsters growl as they approach. Bota yells for them to get back, trying to fend them off as they board the makeshift raft. One of the creatures lunges forward, its jaws wide open. Bota shoves his weapon into the creature's mouth, the beast's teeth crunching down on the metal. He is overwhelmed by the horde. He screams for them to stay back. Tears stream down his face as he cries for help, pleading that he wants to live. He screams that he does not want to die. The monster attacking him is suddenly impaled from behind. A powerful force strikes the creature, sending it flying. Bota and Lita look on in shock. In the distance, a figure stands calmly on the water. It is a woman with long white hair, an eye patch, and two large swords on her back. She stands on a small surf-like craft, heavily armed and ready for battle. She approaches, her single eye fixed on the scene. Bota and Lita stare up at their rescuer in utter disbelief, with Bota questioning if she is even a person. The woman with white hair and an eye patch stares back impassively. Bota, holding Lita close, voices his shock and confusion. Bota and Lita cling to their wreckage as the creatures close in. With a click, the stranger prepares her weapon. The monsters let out a guttural roar. A wave of them rushes forward to attack. The woman coolly aims her harpoon gun. Bota and Lita watch in terrified anticipation. A bright flash erupts from the barrel of the gun as she fires. She fires relentlessly, her expression unchanged. The harpoons find their marks, instantly killing the attacking monsters. The woman continues to fire through the smoke and chaos. Bota and Lita are showered with gore, but are saved from the creature that was about to attack them. He recoils as the projectiles embed themselves in the wreckage around him. Bota stares in wide-eyed shock at the weapons that saved him. Bota stares at the woman, wondering about her identity. The assault on the creatures continues without pause. The woman continues her relentless barrage. The bodies of the slain creatures are tossed about in the churning water. Bota can only watch the incredible display of power from a distance. Bota and Lita are alerted by a sudden sound. A surviving monster begins to pull itself aboard their wreckage. The monster roars as it prepares to attack the children. Bota leaps into action to protect his sister. His face is a mask of strained effort and fear. He tightens his grip on the handle of his weapon. Bota shoves the weapon deep into the monster's gaping maw. The beast growls, its sharp teeth clamping down. The creature grabs onto the weapon, trying to overpower him. Its clawed hand moves menacingly towards Bota's face. He screams in a mixture of terror and exertion. He forces the monster back, blood splattering from its mouth. The creature falls limp onto the wreckage. Bota stares breathless and amazed. His rescuer stands victorious over the corpses of the creatures. She disengages the empty ammunition clip. The magazine falls away from the weapon with a thunk. She smoothly attaches a new component to her weapon. Spotting the danger, Bota shouts for her to look behind her. The last monster makes its move, leaping towards the hunter. She casually blocks the attack. The device she was loading spins as she throws it. The device sinks into the depths. She glides away on her board, putting distance between herself and the monster. Blood drips from the fresh wounds on her arm. The claw marks are clearly visible on her arm guard and skin. Her eye widens slightly in anticipation. The water churns as the submerged device activates. The creatures are pulled helplessly into the swirling water. She reaches for the hilts of the twin blades on her back. The children look on, startled by her next move. She unsheathes her impressive twin swords with a metallic ring. She plants her foot firmly on the board. She launches into a swirling charge across the water's surface. She closes the distance to the last few creatures. Her blades meet flesh, sending blood everywhere as she cuts a monster in two. The defeated creature lets out a final gurgle as it dies. She expertly maneuvers her board along the back of a dying monster. In an acrobatic move, she inverts herself to strike from a new angle. She spins rapidly, a blur of motion. The water is whipped into a frenzy by her high-speed attack. She glides across the water, leaving the chaos behind her. The final creature stares her down, its face scarred from the battle. The creature is utterly obliterated by the force of her attack. The bloody remains splash into the ocean. The battle is over and she moves on. Her hair whips in the wind as she continues on her path. A lone warrior on a strange board zips across the water, leaving a wake behind her as she closes in on a group of sea monsters. With incredible speed, she launches herself at the creatures. Her long white hair flows as she swings a massive blade, slicing through a monster in a spray of blood. She dodges a snapping jaw, moving with fluid grace. Her blades become a blur, cutting through the horde of monsters with brutal efficiency. Watching from his raft, Bota is stunned into silence, his heart pounding as he realizes she is killing the sea monsters. He can't believe how easily she is dispatching the creatures that nearly killed them. The warrior skillfully maneuvers her board through the chaotic waters. Another monster roars as it lunges towards her. With a determined expression, she readies her weapon for another devastating strike. She meets the monster's attack head-on, her blade clashing against its sharp teeth. The battle is a whirlwind of motion, as she slices and dices through the creature's tough hide. Blood and water spray into the air with each powerful swing of her weapon. The monster's severed parts crash into the sea. The waves turn red with gore. Her face is splattered with blood, but her gaze remains sharp and focused on the remaining threats. More creatures emerge, their cries echoing across the water. She readies her weapon once more. She pivots and swings, her blade cleaving through another monster's head. The creature lets out a final, pained screech. Blood splatters across the children's makeshift raft as the monster is slain before them. Bota and Lita, covered in the creature's blood, stare in wide-eyed terror. They huddle together, stunned by the violence. Just as they think it's over, another monster appears. The creature lunges at them, and Lita screams in fear. But the warrior is faster. She leaps high into the air, soaring over the terrified children to intercept the final threat. She descends in a powerful arc, her blades poised to strike. With a thunderous impact, she lands directly on the monster, her twin blades impaling it and ending the fight. Bota watches, his face a mask of shock, as the last creature is destroyed. The children stare at their savior. She stands atop the massive corpse, blood dripping from her chains. The warrior glances over her shoulder at the two children she just saved. She stands surrounded by the floating carcasses of the slain sea monsters. She calmly wipes the blood from her face. She lets out a quiet sigh of relief and sheathes her weapon, the battle finally over. Bota and Lita continue to watch her, mesmerized. Bota swallows nervously, holding Lita close as they face their mysterious rescuer. Bota wonders who she is and if she's a bad person. But then he remembers that she saved them, so perhaps she's nice after all. He recalls the danger when she fired her harpoon guns. He thinks about how close the shots came to hitting him and Lita. He is torn, questioning whether this powerful warrior is an enemy or an ally. The warrior seems to read his mind, asking if he thinks she's a good person or a bad one. She then tells them they were extremely lucky to meet a harpoonist in the open sea. Bota is taken aback, confused by the term harpoonist. He remembers his father telling him that their people also had harpoonists. His father had explained that harpoonists were warriors who fought sea monsters to protect their towns. The word warriors echoes in Bota's mind as he processes the information. Looking at the woman standing before them, Bota finally understands she's a harpoonist. The warrior introduces herself, stating her name is Kana and that she is from Union Busen. Bota recalls his father's words about warriors who fight sea monsters. Looking at the mysterious woman who saved them, he understands that she must be a harpoonist. The warrior introduces herself, stating her name is Kana and that she is from Union Busen. As Bota repeats the name Union Busen in confusion, a deep rumbling sound begins to fill the air. A deep rumbling sound echoes across the water. The rumbling grows louder as a massive silhouette appears on the horizon. The sight causes Kana and the children to turn and look. Bota stares in disbelief at the colossal structure emerging from the gloom, wondering aloud if it could be an island. He and Lita look on in stunned silence. The structure is not an island, but a gargantuan vessel, a floating city named Union Busen. The massive ship cuts through the waves, steadily approaching their small raft. The rumbling of its engines grows louder as the immense form of the ship draws nearer. The name Union Busen is visible on the rusted hull of the approaching ship city. The sheer scale of the vessel is overwhelming as it glides through the dark water. Bota looks up in awe at the towering wall of metal that is the ship's hull. Bota and Lita are splashed by the ship's wake as it passes, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. One of the children exclaims that it is a boat. The immense creaking structure passes by. Bota says it aloud, still trying to process the sight, a boat as big as an island. The colossal ship now looms beside their tiny raft, which is still surrounded by the carcasses of the sea monsters. Bota holds Lita close as they watch bubbles rise to the surface of the water nearby. Suddenly, a smaller, submarine-like vessel bursts from the water. It settles on the surface with a great splash. The unexpected arrival startles Bota and Lita. Kana, however, seems to have been expecting it, remarking that they have finally arrived. A hatch on the vessel creaks open. A man in armor emerges from the hatch, greeting Kana. She replies coolly, calling him Brune and stating that he is too slow. Another warrior appears beside Brune, telling Kana that they were not slow but that she was simply too fast. Bota watches, realizing another person is there. Brune steps out of the vessel and onto its deck. Bota and Lita watch as he approaches. A group of warriors assembles on the deck. Bota stares in shock, his mind reeling at the sight of so many people. High above on the decks of Union Busen, figures begin to appear at the railings. Crowds of citizens gather, murmuring as they look down at the scene unfolding below. Bota and Lita look up at the gathering onlookers, overwhelmed. A woman in the crowd points down, telling a child named Lita to look. Kana stands ready, her expression unreadable as the crowd watches. Brune stands with his crew, observing the situation. The citizens of Union Busen look on with curiosity. More and more people fill the balconies and walkways of the massive ship, their combined murmurs drifting down. Lita remarks on the sheer number of people. The sight is too much for Bota, and tears begin to stream down his face. Lita, her own eyes filled with tears of joy, exclaims that this means they are safe, and asks Bota for confirmation. Overcome with emotion, Bota grabs his sister and pulls her into a tight hug. He cries out for their father. As he holds Lita, the realization washes over him in a wave of relief. They have finally met other people. Bota sobs, overwhelmed with the feeling that they are saved, that they have finally made it. Kana watches the children's emotional display with a stoic expression. A bright spotlight flares to life on the ship, operated by two guards. The powerful beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating the small raft, the children, and the monstrous carcasses floating around them. A young girl's eyes are filled with tears of overwhelming relief and exhaustion. A boy's face is grim, splattered with blood and grime, his expression a mixture of hardship and determination. Lita, her own eyes welling with tears, exclaims that they must be safe now. Overwhelmed, Bota grabs his sister and pulls her into a tight, protective hug. Bota cries out for his father, his face contorted with a mix of sorrow and relief. Clinging to each other on their small raft, the children are overcome by the realization that they have finally found other people after so long. Bota sobs with relief, repeating that they are saved and that they have finally made it. Kana watches the children with a stoic expression. A bright spotlight flares to life from the massive ship above, illuminating the scene. The children's makeshift raft floats amidst the carcasses of the slain sea monsters. A small boat carrying men approaches the massive hull of Union Busen. Bota and Lita watch with wide, uncertain eyes. From the children's viewpoint, they see two figures on futuristic boards skimming across the water towards them. Elsewhere, a woman with white hair and a distinctive eye patch shouts orders, demanding her team search everywhere and ensure not a single target escapes. The woman, identified as Kana, asks a Dr. Foyd for a status report. From deep underwater, a diver responds, reporting that they have cleaned up the area well. The diver confirms that the underwater wreckage is now clean of threats. The diver reports that only diced-up bodies remain. Dr. Foyd complains to Kana over the calms, wishing she had left at least one creature alive for him to study. Brune remarks to the doctor that there was no way Kana would leave a sea monster alive. Dr. Foyd laments the monster's bad luck in encountering Kana out of all the harpoonists. Amidst the wreckage are destroyed monster eggs. A team member notes that they would have been in trouble if the eggs had hatched and asks if they were all smashed. Kana quietly replies that she did not destroy them. Brune inspects one of the bizarre monster corpses, wondering what kind of ugly creature it is. Suddenly, one of the divers urgently calls for Dr. Foyd, telling him to look at something he has found. Brune and Kana react with surprise. Underwater, the divers are stunned by their discovery, with one identifying the creature as a kentrasi. The divers' lights illuminate the massive, monstrous form of the dead kentrasi in the dark depths. The sheer scale of the creature's corpse is immense, dwarfing the divers exploring it. One of the team members exclaims that the creature is huge, estimating its length at 50 meters. Brune stammers in shock, realizing it's a kentrasi, which Kana clarifies is one of the 7 devils of the sea. Dr. Foyd, amazed by its size, asks Kana if she managed to kill this one alone as well. After a moment of silence, Kana states that she was not the one who killed the massive beast either. Dr. Foyd is bewildered and asks who could have possibly killed it. The team stands atop the colossal corpse, contemplating the mystery. Kana looks down at a massive, bloody wound on the creature, where a giant, unfamiliar weapon is embedded deep in its flesh. Her expression is thoughtful as she considers the implications of this unknown, powerful force. Kana turns her head. Her attention is drawn to a small boat moving away across the dark sea. An official confirms their names, Bota and Lita, while filling out a refugee registration form. The official asks the children how long they were adrift. He notes their appearance suggests it was a significant amount of time, perhaps a year or more. Bota quietly responds that he thinks they were adrift for around 10 years. The official reacts with shock, questioning how 2 children could survive at sea for 10 years. His demeanor quickly turns sour and sarcastic, accusing the children of looking down on him as a low-level public servant. He smacks Bota on the head with his clipboard, demanding the truth and insisting he will not accept any false information. Lita shoves the man and shouts that they are telling the truth. Enraged, the official yells back, asking how she dares to shout at him and if she knows who he is. Lita calmly identifies him as a low-level public servant, much to his annoyance. Furious, the man stabs his pen into the clipboard. Bota quickly intervenes, explaining that their dad had been with them. His expression saddens as he adds that their father is no longer with them. Tears stream down Bota's face as he recounts the painful memory, explaining that a sea monster took his father. Bota explains to an official that his father had been with them on their long journey. As the official takes down their information, Lita peeks out from behind Bota. With a sad expression, he clarifies that his father is no longer with them. Tears welling in his eyes, Bota recounts the painful memory of a sea monster taking his father. The official, confirming that it is now just the 2 of them, continues to fill out their paperwork. He introduces himself as Kiho Lei of the refugee center, assuring the children he will be taking care of them. While Kiho Lei invites them to ask questions, Lita playfully sticks her tongue out at him. Later on a boat, Bota points to figures on a derelict ship in the distance and asks who they are. Kiho Lei guesses it's their first time seeing a harpoonist. Bota stares in awe, realizing he is looking at real harpoonists. He watches the warriors standing over the carcasses of slain monsters, understanding that they are the ones who protect people. A memory surfaces of his father, who proudly showed Bota a tattoo on his shoulder, revealing he was once a harpoonist himself. The sight of the harpoonists makes Bota realize his father had been telling the truth all along. He sees that one of the harpoonists, Kana, has the exact same tattoo. It confirms that his father's stories were not just tales. Kiho Lei tells a confused Bota that Kana, the woman who rescued them, is a special kind of harpoonist. He explains that she is a highly ranked 3-star harpoonist. Impressed, Kiho-lee repeats that she has 3 whole stars, a fact that Boda questions, not understanding its significance. Kiho-lee begins to explain the ranking system, stating that harpoonists mark the number of sea monsters they have killed on their bodies. He clarifies that each star represents 100 slain sea monsters. To earn even 1 star is a great feat, as countless harpoonists die trying. Having 3 stars means Kana has killed at least 300 monsters. Doing the math, Boda asks if that means 6 stars would signify at least 600 kills. Kiho-lee laughs at the idea, calling it impossible and stating that 4 stars is the highest rank among Union Busen's harpoonists. He adds that if a 6-star harpoonist ever existed, they would be a living legend. Boda's eyes widen as a startling realization dawns on him. He remembers his father's tattoo clearly now. It definitely had 6 stars. As Boda processes this revelation, the harpoonists glide across the water towards their boat. Kiho-lee waves to them, announcing that they have permission to board and can switch ships now. One of the harpoonists acknowledges Kana. Kana's intense gaze falls upon the children. Boda and Leta watch nervously. She turns to face them. She carries a massive, formidable harpoon on her back. She lands on the boat with a splash. Boda cries out in surprise. He stumbles backward. She silently regards him. In response to an unasked question, Kana states that she was not the one who destroyed the monster eggs. Elsewhere, another harpoonist inspects a bizarre sea monster's corpse, remarking on its ugliness. Kana explains that its hard shell rendered attacks useless, and it killed everyone, identifying the creature as a skudum. The harpoonist recalls hearing that all of Union Busen's forces were sent out to kill it. Kana corrects him, revealing that the ultra-crab skudum was not actually killed by the harpoonists, leaving him confused. She recounts the story she heard. The creature feasted on person after person. Then, after having its fill, it simply returned to the sea on its own. The other harpoonist scoffs, asking if she truly believes the refugees' fairy tales. Kana replies with conviction that it is not a fairy tale. A massive, crab-like monster called a skudum is shown tearing apart a ship. Due to its hard shell, counterattacks were futile, leading to the death of everyone on board. A harpoonist recalls hearing that all of Union Busen's forces had been dispatched to kill the creature. Kana, however, corrects him, stating that the harpoonists were not the ones who killed the ultra-crab skudum. With a questioning look from her colleague, Kana elaborates on the story. She recounts how the skudum devoured person after person until it was satisfied, and then simply left on its own. The other harpoonist scoffs, asking Kana if she actually believes the fairy tales told by refugees. With a serious expression, Kana insists that it is not a fairy tale. A memory flashes back to a scene of carnage. A young girl, looking like a younger Kana, is caught in a horrifying crush of bodies as someone desperately yells for her to hide. The source of the destruction is revealed as the giant skudum, its massive claws crushing the wreckage of a ship, while a voice pleads for escape. The monster's immense power is on full display as it crushes people effortlessly. Amidst the chaos, the young girl huddles behind some debris, hidden from view. Covered in blood and tears, the young girl watches the horror unfold. Her memory connects to the present as she affirms that she witnessed the event with her own eyes. Back in the present, Kana's expression is grim and determined. She concludes her story by stating that to sea monsters, humans are nothing more than floating snacks to be eaten at will. Her colleague is left speechless, finally understanding the source of Kana's intense hatred for sea monsters. The scene then shifts to a small boat chugging through the water, approaching a colossal structure. As their boat nears the massive ship, an official calls out to 2 young refugees, a boy and a girl, who look back at him. The official announces their arrival. The 2 children, Boda and Leta, stare in wide-eyed wonder at the main entrance to the immense fortress of Union Busen. Their small vessel navigates into a vast, brightly lit internal dock, dwarfed by the industrial scale of the structure around them. As they disembark, the official cautions the children to watch their step. A crewman hands Boda a box containing their salvaged belongings, for which the boy offers his thanks. The official leads them along a metal walkway, informing them that they will be provided with a temporary home. Boda eagerly asks if this means they can stay for good. The official sternly warns them that any trouble during their trial period will result in immediate expulsion. Overjoyed by the news, Boda exclaims to Leta that they get to stay. The official watches their celebration with a pensive expression, seemingly contemplating their situation. The official notices the children are barefoot, stating that going without shoes is dangerous and they need to get some right away. Grumbling that his shift is almost over, he resigns himself to the task. He tells them to follow him to the market, a concept unfamiliar to the children. With a slight smirk, the official tells the curious children they'll understand what a market is when they see it. He then leads them down a long, industrial corridor. Bota is amazed at the immense size of their new surroundings. Lita excitedly points out that the ground is stable, unlike their boat. Their attention is caught by a large industrial crane moving a load of scrap. Bota watches as the crane's massive claw opens, dropping a heap of twisted metal and debris with a series of heavy thuds. The crane continues its work, loading the salvaged scrap into the back of a large truck. Workers look on from below as the machine operates. As they pass by, Bota observes workers sorting through the piles of scrap. He realizes that, like his own people, they use relics recovered from underwater. The air is filled with the smell of metal and the bright flash of welding. The official warns the children to stay close to avoid getting lost in the sprawling complex. Bota, carrying their box, and Lita follow him closely up a flight of stairs. Their path takes them past a maintenance area where large, robotic machines are being serviced by technicians. Finally, the official stops at a large metal door and announces that they have arrived. The children peer past him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Bota's eyes widen in shock as the door opens to reveal a sight he's never seen before. It's a vibrant, multi-level indoor market teeming with people and activity. The children are astounded by the sheer number of people. Their attention is drawn to vendors hawking freshly caught fish. They also notice an old man playing a violin, adding to the market's lively atmosphere. They stop to gaze longingly at delicious-looking grilled skewers. Their moment of wonder is cut short when their guide impatiently tells them to keep up. The official leads them to a shoe stall. The shopkeeper quotes a price of 30 nuts for 2 pairs. The official expresses his surprise at the cost and asks for a discount for the refugees. The vendor scoffs at the idea of a discount, stating he can't do it. He then asks if they have anything to trade instead, prompting Bota to rummage through his box of belongings. Bota proudly presents an old alarm clock as a potential trade. The vendor, however, is unimpressed and gestures to a wall covered in clocks for sale, asking if the boy is blind. As Bota searches for another item to trade, the vendor's eyes suddenly widen in shock. He has spotted a sealed bottle of Ballantine Scotch whiskey among their things. Bota, unfamiliar with the item, questions what whiskey is. Seeing his opportunity, the vendor quickly agrees to trade the shoes for the bottle. Just as Bota is about to agree, the official intervenes, questioning the fairness of trading 2 pairs of shoes for a whole bottle of whiskey. Ignoring the vendor's protest, he loudly announces to the entire market that the children have whiskey. The announcement causes an immediate stir as the crowd murmurs in disbelief. They confirm that it's a genuine sealed bottle of alcohol, a rare sight. Instantly, people swarm the children, shouting out bids and starting a frantic auction. Bota is completely bewildered as the bids for the whiskey rapidly climb into the thousands. The chaotic auction concludes with the children now sporting new pairs of shoes. Carrying their newly acquired supplies, the children walk away from the market. Bota happily comments that the people there are very nice, having given them so much in exchange for a single bottle of alcohol. Lita wistfully says that if they had known, they wouldn't have poured the rest of their alcohol into the ocean. Bota reassures her, explaining that they had no choice because they needed rainwater to survive more than they needed alcohol. Their guide imparts a crucial lesson, explaining that the value of things can change based on the situation. He sternly tells them that in this place, the only thing they can truly trust is money. Finally, the official leads them up a set of stairs to a heavy door, announcing that this is where they will be staying. As the door creaks open, Bota and Lita peer into the darkness with wide, uncertain eyes. Carrying their newly acquired supplies, Bota happily comments that the people there are very nice, having given them so much in exchange for a single bottle of alcohol. Lita wistfully says that if they had known this would happen, they would not have poured the rest of their alcohol into the ocean. Bota reassures her, explaining that they had no choice because they needed rainwater to survive more than they needed alcohol back then. Their guide explains that the value of things changes depending on the situation, and that they should never forget that. He sternly impresses upon them that the only thing they can trust there is money. The official leads them up a set of stairs to a heavy door, announcing that this is where they will be staying. As the door creaks open, Bota and Lita peer inside with wide, uncertain eyes. The door opens to reveal a cluttered, dilapidated room. The official nervously comments on the room's dirty state, flinching as a spider crawls nearby. Bota and Lita can only stare speechless. To the official's surprise, the children's shock turns to pure joy, exclaiming that the room is amazing. They gleefully flop onto the bed, overjoyed to have one. Bota excitedly points out to Lita that there's even a window. They both rush to it, looking out in awe. Lita gets Bota's attention, pointing out that the sky is sparkling. The official corrects her, telling her those are stars, a concept she doesn't understand. Bota looks up at the sky, mesmerized, wondering if this is what stars are. The night sky is filled with countless stars. The two children gaze out at the vast, star-dusted expanse of the night sky, a sight they have never witnessed before. The children are still in awe of the stars. The sight triggers a memory of their father. In a flashback, a younger Bota asked his father what a star was. Their father explained that since they were always below deck at night, they had never seen a star. He described it as something bright enough to be seen in the dark, and wished he could show them. The father looked on wistfully, remarking on how beautiful the stars were. Back in the present, Bota looks up at the sky with tears in his eyes, agreeing that it is indeed pretty. The massive fleet of Union Busen floats on the dark ocean, its lights beaming up into the star-filled night. Large cranes begin to operate, their cables creaking. Heavy chains are lowered into the illuminated water. An old man with goggles frantically orders the crew to raise something up slowly. A large winch whirs, reeling in heavy, wet cables. From the depths, a massive, dark shape begins to surface, held by clinking chains. Water cascades off the enormous object as it is hoisted from the sea. The carcass of a monstrous sea creature is revealed. The monstrous head of the dead creature dangles over a small boat, its sheer size astonishing the onlookers. Two workers stare up in awe, commenting on how big it is. A closer look reveals the creature's mangled and grotesque features. A young man with spiky hair looks on with disgust, remarking that it's ugly. The old man is ecstatic, marveling at what a valuable sample they have acquired. He tells the younger man that this is what the apex predator of the current world looks like. Brune recognizes the creature as a kentrasi, one of the 7 devils of the sea. He silently wonders if he could fight such a monster and survive. The old man chides Brune, asking if fighting sea monsters is all he can think about. He states that humanity has been far too ignorant of these creatures until now. The old man declares that as a scientist, it is his duty to research and unravel the mysteries of the sea monsters. His expression turns manic. He declares that all he wants to do is take the creature apart for the sake of humanity. His strange excitement makes Brune flinch away, questioning the doctor's behavior. Brune looks around, wondering where Kana has gone. A splash is heard from the side of the massive ship. A deserted industrial corridor is shown. Kana walks purposefully down the corridor. Kana enters a workshop with a clang. A bearded man at a desk, whom she calls Sting, greets her, saying he was waiting. Kana gets straight to the point, asking what he knows. Sting cuts to the chase, confirming that it's the real deal. When Kana asks if he's sure, he affirms it and reveals a massive weapon on his workbench, identifying it as a harpoonist sword. Kana looks at the weapon, wondering how something so valuable ended up there. She takes hold of the heavy sword. Kana examines the weapon closely. Kana deduces that if the weapon is truly a harpoonist sword, then its owner must be a specific man. She identifies the owner as the Leviathan Slayer, the legendary 6-star harpoonist Tian Ma. Sting asks her what she plans to do. Kana states that a bloodbath will happen soon. Elsewhere, Bota watches over a sleeping Lita and thinks to himself that the kids cannot stay here. The children lay in their new bed, with the starry sky visible through the window. Bota reflects that for the first time in his life, he went to bed looking at the stars. He recalls being told not to worry because the harpoonists with stars on their arms were protecting them. But for some reason, he remained uneasy. Bota found that he could not fall asleep. Her massive twin swords rest on a workbench. In a dimly lit room, a young woman with white hair sits quietly in a window, gazing out at the star-filled sky. Her expression is pensive as she looks out into the night. A memory surfaces of a great beast's demise. Kentrasi, one of the 7 great sea monsters, was dead. The creature's body was covered in wounds, evidence of a desperate battle. The focus of the memory shifts to the blood-stained hilt of a harpoonist sword, hinting at the identity of the victor. The woman wonders to herself if Tian was truly the one who destroyed Kentrasi. She questions his motive for doing so. She continues to ponder his reasons, questioning what he was trying to protect. A memory of 2 smiling children flashes in her mind. She considers if he was trying to protect his family. Turning away from the window, she sits down, her gaze falling upon a small snow globe. The snow globe contains a quaint snow-covered house, a peaceful scene frozen in time. As she holds the globe, the image of her own face is reflected in the glass. The thought of family triggers a flood of memories. She recalls her past, how her parents and she were refugees living on the open sea, floating above the sunken ruins of the old world. They survived by scavenging the seabed. A younger version of herself, Kana, looks at a piece of scrap with disdain, declaring it to be just trash. Kana, at age 14, is approached by her older brother. He tries to lift her spirits, suggesting she think of their work not as scavenging but as a treasure hunt. Amongst the piles of junk, her brother spots something interesting. He excitedly shows it to his sister, who is surprised. He eagerly rubs it clean, proclaiming it's almost new before offering it to Kana. He hands her a small, round object. Kana takes it, confused. Peering inside, she discovers a whole new world captured within the glass ball. Kana is mesmerized by the snow globe, remarking how pretty it is and imagining that people once lived in such places. Her heart beats with a strange excitement. After a moment, she tries to give it back, saying she doesn't need it, leaving her siblings confused. Her sister suggests they could sell it at Union Busen for money. But their brother insists it's a gift from their parents and tells Kana to take good care of it as they embrace her warmly. As her heart pounds, Kana gazes at the tiny house inside the globe. She is filled with a deep longing to live in such a place. The refugees would trade scrap metal to Union Busen in exchange for supplies. The massive ship became a symbol of hope and yearning for young Kana. That huge boat was the source of all her dreams. One day, she heard the faint sound of music drifting from it across the water. The music filled her with wonder. She imagined the people living there, safe from sea monsters and rough tides, and wished with all her heart that she could live there too. Becoming full citizens of Union Busen was the ultimate goal for all the refugees. Her family and others would gather around maps, planning their next search. Life as a refugee was exhausting and dangerous. There were frequent accidents and injuries, like divers being crushed by crumbling underwater ruins. On top of that, they had to contend with constant attacks from sea monsters, which often proved fatal. People died every day. After Mr. Chialman and Mrs. Midori were killed, the community grieved. Her brother clenched his fists, enraged by the cruelty of their lives. A distraught Kana asked her sister why they had to live this way. Her brother tried to reassure her, saying all they needed to do was find a treasure. He desperately reminded her of the promise that they would be granted citizenship if they found it. His sister pulled him into a comforting embrace. The memory shifts to a different moment, where her brother wondered if Union Busen would even buy what they found. Kana, leaning against a wall, was deeply skeptical. She couldn't understand why there would be treasure in an ocean that was filled with nothing but trash. But then, during a dive, her brother spotted something. He shouted that he'd found it. Before them was a massive door bearing a strange symbol. They had finally found the relics. One of the divers recognized the symbol on the door as the mark of Masuda Heavy Industries. With a loud creak, the massive doors opened. Inside were rows of large, dormant machines. Emerging from the water, her brother shouted in triumph. A massive, barnacle-encrusted machine was hoisted from the depths. The refugees on the ship erupted in cheers as the machine was lifted. They hugged and celebrated, overjoyed by their discovery. Kana looked at the rusted machine and questioned if this lump of metal was really their treasure. Her brother explained it wasn't scrap, but a deep-sea exploration unit from the old civilization. Her brother and sister excitedly told her that they were finally going to join Union Busen and become citizens. The thought of living there finally began to sink in for Kana. Kana asked with a smile if this meant they wouldn't have to float around anymore, and her family pulled her into a tight hug. Everyone was overjoyed, believing their worries about sea monsters were finally over. But that moment of joy was fleeting. It was then that the nightmare began. A horrifying creature descended upon them, its sharp claws tearing through the crowd of celebrating refugees. A massive, barnacle-encrusted machine is hoisted from the depths as the refugees erupt in cheers, celebrating their discovery. The crowd celebrates their success, hugging and shouting with joy. A young girl with white hair looks at the rusted machine and questions if this lump of metal is really their treasure. A young man explains that it is not just scrap metal, but a deep-sea exploration unit developed by the old civilization. Her siblings excitedly tell her that they are finally going to join Union Busen and become citizens. The thought of living there finally begins to sink in for the young girl, Kana. Kana asks with a smile if this means they will not have to float around anymore, and her family pulls her into a tight hug. Everyone was overjoyed, believing their worries about sea monsters were finally over. But that moment of joy was fleeting. It was then that the nightmare began. A horrifying creature descends upon them, its sharp claws tearing through the crowd of celebrating refugees. The sounds of crunching fill the air as the beast slaughters the refugees. Kana watches in horror, splattered with blood. The giant monster lets out a deafening roar as it continues its brutal attack on the helpless people. Chaos erupts on the deck as people scatter in a desperate attempt to escape the monster's rampage, their screams echoing in the night. Amidst the carnage, a woman calls out to Kana. The young girl looks on in shock, recognizing her mother. With her last breath, Kana's mother screams for her to hide. The sickening crunch of the monster's claw echoes across the deck. A spray of blood erupts, painting the scene in crimson. Kana hides behind a crate, trembling and covered in her mother's blood. She whispers for her mother, her body trembling with shock and grief. Meanwhile, the remaining refugees arm themselves and charge at the beast. Cursing the beast, they strike its armored leg with their makeshift weapons, but their attacks are futile. The monster simply lifts its massive leg, preparing to crush them all. The massive leg comes crashing down with a series of heavy booms. The impact obliterates the defiant refugees in an instant. The monster's blood-soaked claw hangs over the devastation. Caught in the monster's grip, a man gasps for help. His plea is cut short as the monster's claw closes around him. The few remaining survivors face the creature looming over them. They can only stare up in abject terror. As the monster tears the refugee fleet apart, a small boat makes a desperate escape. From atop the monster, someone screams for the boat to turn around. Inside, a man pleads to go back for his friends, but the driver refuses, insisting they will be next. The two men continue to argue. The monster lets out a deep rumble. The beast launches itself from the wreckage, soaring through the air directly toward their escaping boat. The men watch in disbelief, wondering what the creature is doing. A rumbling sound emanates from its claw. The monster's claw makes a clacking sound as it prepares a new attack. It fires the spikes from its shell like a barrage of missiles. The deadly projectiles rain down on the small boat, shredding it to pieces. Amidst the chaos, Kana's father finds her and tells her to come with him. He slams a heavy door shut behind them. They catch their breath in a trembling hallway. They rush to a control room, watching the chaos unfold outside. Her father desperately calls for help on the radio, identifying them as the refugee fleet to Union Busen. He frantically reports that they are under attack by a giant sea monster, pleading for Union Busen to respond. He begs for anyone to respond, as the monster continues to destroy what is left of the fleet, but his pleas are met with silence. Far from the chaos on the dark, churning sea, a lone figure is visible in the distance. The figure sits peacefully, holding a fishing rod. The figure holds a fishing rod. He sits atop what appears to be a piece of strange, technological debris. He calmly puts a wriggling, tentacled creature on his hook as bait. The young man with glasses has an unreadable expression. With the bait set, the scene lingers on the mysterious fisherman. The story is to be continued. As